Yeah, the New Orleans Saints 2022 season isn't over yet, but is it really ever too early for a mock draft? We got all of that and a little bit of lanyard for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Saints, your daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much as always, making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget we're free and available on all podcast apps and on YouTube as well. And I'm your host, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter, your New Orleans Saints expert, credential member of the media. Find me over at CrescentCitySports.com, USA Today's Saints Wire, Tuesdays on Locked On NFL, and here with you every single Monday through Friday on Locked On Saints. And today's episode is brought to you by Simply Safe. Simply Safe is the best home security system that you're going to find with their Fast Protect technology exclusively from Simply Safe. 24/7 monitoring agents capture evidence and it can accurately verify a threat for a faster emergency response. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Visit simplysafe.com/LockedOnNFL to learn more. On today's episode of Locked On Saints, it's officially mock draft season. Did I think that we would be there already in week 15 of the 2022 NFL season? No, but does that mean that I don't want to do it? Also no. I loves me some mock drafts and I loves me some draft season. So let's get it started. Here's the way that we're going to go through for today's episode. I took a look at where the New Orleans Saints are currently slated to draft in the second round. We'll start off there. Let's say that the Saints don't trade Sean Payton this offseason, whatever, or they do, like they still have this pick either way. So let's talk about it. So we'll break down kind of some options there. The second round option, really, really easy for the New Orleans Saints, but we'll talk about some of the other options that are there. Then in the second part, we'll take a look at the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals have lost not only their game against the New England Patriots on Monday Night Football, but they also now have the big injury, unfortunately, when it comes to Kyler Murray. And so what that could mean is a change of regime over in Arizona. And Arizona is one of the teams that Sean Payton has been connected to in reports. So we'll take a look at it. We'll take a look at it and see what that might look like. Then we'll look at a couple of other potential Payton pick destinations, as I like to call them, the Los Angeles Chargers and even the Denver Broncos. Why not? So we're going to take a look at three different kind of areas where the Saints could be picking and what options are there. Basically just trying to maximize kind of like your thoughts on where the New Orleans Saints could be picking in 2023 and how that factors into how you feel about a Sean Payton trade too. Like it's one thing to say, oh yeah, there's a first round pick that's in conversation here. It's another thing to discuss what that first round pick could turn into, or even second round pick could turn into. So we'll put some names to that information for you. So let's get it started. We'll start off with just the New Orleans Saints and where they currently sit, which is somewhere around the early round of round two, right? Round two, pick 36, pick 38, depending upon your like go-to projections, things like that. Remember, the Saints used to have a first round pick, but that is now going to go to the Philadelphia Eagles, which is looking like a top 5 pick so far, which is really unfortunate to see. But the Saints could still get one of those early second round picks that kind of borders that first round selection, talent. So we'll see where they are here. This was an easy one for me, just based upon the players that were available on the board. I went with Hendon Hooker. We'll see how his draft stock ends up changing over the course of the offseason as they learn more in terms of medicals across the NFL, how his combine, workouts go. Does he get a chance to throw? Does he have a pro day where he can throw and show NFL teams some stuff, things like that? Like, we'll see what all that does and how that moves the needle for his draft stock. But as of right now, if I'm projecting forward and saying, yes, Hendon Hooker could be ready to go by September or by August, which is the way kind of these ACL injuries have progressed over time, especially when there doesn't seem to be any additional complications like MCL damage or anything like that with this injury, then I don't have a problem rolling the dice on Hendon Hooker. And honestly, I know that people are, kind of thrown off about the age and the scheme and stuff like that, but like a wide receiver option scheme isn't really that hard to translate to the NFL. In fact, it's already been a huge part of what the New Orleans Saints have done since Drew Brees and Marcus Colston. It was a part of Drew Brees and Michael Thomas's repertoire, and it's a part of Chris Olave's repertoire already. And you have these fast, smart receivers who know how to sell a 10-yard vertical stem and then, which if it essentially just means coming off the line of scrimmage, going 10 yards, right? And then reading the leverage of the defender or where the defender is he even with you? Is he outside leverage? Is he underneath you? And then making a decision upon where to run from there. And then you have Hendon Hooker who makes the same decision. Develop Hendon Hooker a little bit more in terms of being able to read the entire field, take advantage of his really good accuracy. He's around 69.4%. Nice, not too bad. In terms of as a whole, but he was 83.4% over nearly half of his throws, which all came between 0 to 10 yards, which is kind of right up the New Orleans Saints alley already anyway. He's somebody that can nickel and dime you. And that offense did like to go, over the top. They like the deep pass, but they also ran a lot of screens, things like that. So lots of opportunity there to get Hendon Hooker into a place to where you're mimicking some of the things that made him comfortable in college, but doing some things new for him in the NFL that he should also be comfortable executing. It'll take a little bit of work. You probably need to make some changes to your offensive coaching staff, but aren't those changes probably on the way already anyway? So is that really that big of a deal? Some of the other options that we're here, in case you don't like the selection of Hendon Hooker, but you like a quarterback, Will Levis was still available at this time. I think Will Levis is a good quarterback. I don't know if he's my style of quarterback. He's close. He's a little bit too leg happy. I like that Hendon Hooker has the mobility and can use it. You can call some plays to get him to use it, but he's not looking to use his legs all the time. Will Levis feels just a little bit too leg happy. We saw something similar with Ian Book watching him in Mobile at the Senior Bowl, to where everything was just pull down and run, pull down and run, pull down and run. I'm worried that Will Levis is going to turn out to be the same. But if he shows some composure in the pocket and shows that he knows how to use his legs as an option, but not as a go-to, then you're going to hear far less arguments out of me when it comes to him. Same thing for Anthony Richardson. I like these SEC quarterbacks a lot, and I like taking SEC players and bringing them into the NFL. I think that's a good transition. So I like what he could bring if that were the case. Will Levis could also be well off the board before here. I mean, some folks see him as the third best quarterback. That's a top 10 selection. Some folks see him as the fourth best quarterback, which pushes him into the second round. Some people see him as the fifth best quarterback. His stock is all over the place. That will all even out as the offseason progresses. It is still December after all. A couple of other players, Army edge rusher Andre Carter II was also there. We'll speak on him a little bit more a little bit later, because I don't entirely like that fit, but we'll discuss that. Defensive lineman out of Iowa, Lukas Van Ness, 6'5", 270 pounds, not as big as you'd like from an interior guy, but his versatility and things like that could potentially work in his favor. A guy that I do like, though, is Notre Dame edge rusher Isaiah Foskey, who is also available here. 6'5", 265 pounds. Not necessarily what the Saints' usual build is at edge rusher, but I think it's time to update that anyway. Start going for these speed rushers that can keep up and maintain sort of what you're looking at going against more and more and more in the NFL, which are these faster quarterbacks. He's the all-time sacks leader for Notre Dame. We've seen it before with Ian Book, how much they like that type of pedigree, but also a blocking technician. And I don't mean one as in on the offensive line. This is a defensive line we're talking about, but my man's got some block punts, block field goals like crazy. So that's something that you could also add into his evaluation a little bit. And then there was another guy that I was intrigued by, Andrew Voorhees, just like one of those offensive linemen that's just like gritty as all get out. 6'6", 325 pounds, already NFL size, particularly on the interior. He's got 25 starts at right guard, 8 starts at left guard, 4 starts at left tackle. He's a 5-year starter on the offensive line for the USC Trojans, but will only be 23 years old. Not too shabby there. A lot of experience playing a bunch of different positions. You'd probably like to get him in at left guard and maybe have your succession plan for what will eventually be the end of Andrus Pete's contract not far down the road from here. So getting a look at a guy like Andrew Voorhees wouldn't take me by surprise here as well. But I think you have bigger priorities than the interior offensive line. Coming up next, that is where you could select right now if you're the New Orleans Saints and nothing changes. But what if you get a first-round pick or an additional second-round pick from a team like the Arizona Cardinals? Could their downfall be a benefit for the New Orleans Saints? It absolutely can be, and we'll talk about why as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. Today's episode is brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all your sports wagering information. Our exclusive online gambling partners here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Every line, every odd, every prop that you hear across the network, Bet Online, because they're the only ones that we trust. Go and check them out today, betonline.net. You can get all the odds, lines, props, but you can also get news, scores, analysis, podcasts, articles, everything that you're looking for to help you keep up on all the trends, all the action, and help you make the right calls. And then you can go and make the call on the same site. It's that simple. So go and check them out today. Bet online, NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB, whatever it is that you're looking for. They'll probably have pickleball eventually. They got esports, auto racing, golf, whatever it is that you need. They've got you taken care of today over at Bet Online, where the game starts. All right, family, continuing on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. We are looking at the Arizona Cardinals selections and what the New Orleans Saints might be able to get up out of them if they do make the decision to move on from not only Cliff Kingsbury, but potentially also moving on from Steve Keim, I've heard is a part of that conversation as well. You could check out more if you're interested in a potential destination for Sean Payton over at Locked On Cardinals. Alex Clancy is going to be breaking it all down over there. So there's kind of a likely route and there's an unlikely route here. We'll look at both of them. We appreciate you very much for making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day, every day for your second listen. Make sure you go and check out Locked On Sports today as well. Everything you need around the world of sports, around 20 to 25 minutes, beyond the scoreboard, behind the scenes with Locked On Sports today and the Locked On Local experts. Go and check them out on this app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Okay, so there's kind of two scenarios here, right? Like right now, the Arizona Cardinals are in line, having just lost their quarterback for what looks like the rest of the season. The fear at this time, the time that I'm recording this, the fear is that it's a serious leg injury. So like barring, some kind of miracle here, very likely Kyler Murray's done for the rest of the year. As of now, the Arizona Cardinals are projected to pick in the top 10. Are you going to get a top 10 pick in exchange for Sean Payton? I don't know. That's going to be a little tough, right? Remember you got 2 firsts and 2 seconds when it came to John Gruden back in a day, but the pick that they knew that they were trading, the first round pick that they knew that they were trading, the position there was 21st. So this would be unprecedented to get a top 10 selection in a trade for a coach. Just to discuss it is an interesting place to land, right? Because in this mock draft that I was doing, they chose the first tackle off the board, which was Paris Johnson, probably the best tackle in this draft class out of Ohio State University. As much as I love the Ohio State University connection here, I don't think that the Saints are going to invest, if they got the opportunity with a top 10 draft selection, I don't think they're going to invest that in another tackle. When you've got Ryan Ramczyk on a long-term deal, you just drafted Trevor Penning, you've got great depth with a guy like James Hurst or vice versa, right? So, I don't think they go tackle there. Quarterback probably just falls out of the range. Maybe you use some of these picks to trade up and grab one of these top 3 quarterbacks. But Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and in this mock, Anthony Richardson was off the board early. But like I mentioned, that could be Will Levis too. It just depends on whose evaluations you're reading, who you're looking at, things like that. Like I said, this will all balance out over time. But your top 3 quarterbacks are very likely off the board with teams like the Houston Texans, the Carolina Panthers, and the Seattle Seahawks all picking in that top 10 range. So in that case, where do you go? Well, there's a couple of guys that are interesting, right? There's a Clemson defensive lineman, Brian Bresee, who I think is awesome. 6'5", 301 pounds in the interior. Do you spend a top 10 selection on an interior defensive lineman, though? That's not, the best prospect since Aaron Donald and Jalen Carter, who's going to be, a top 3, top 5 selection. Do you do that? I don't know. I don't know if you do that. So as much as I like him, he is more than just a nose tackle, though. He's a good 3-tech that has some versatility. He's a penetrating attacking guy, has a ridiculous motor, great in the run game, pretty good penetrator in the pass rush game as well. Or do you go back to the edge? And this is where I think, like, if the Saints somehow were to shock the world and get a top 10 selection, let's even just say a top 15 selection from some team that's desperate and wants Sean Payton as their head coach, which they'll be out there, I'm going edge if I can't get quarterback. I'm going to the edge rush game. I don't know if Marcus Davenport's back this year. We can talk a little bit. We can break that down a little bit more on Wednesday when we get to kind of our biggest questions. We're going to look at what happens in the future with some guys like Michael Thomas and Marcus Davenport. But if he's not back, I'm going back to the drawing board at defensive end. You're going to have Cam Jordan very likely for another couple of seasons. Peyton Turner's not going to go anywhere on his rookie contract, right? I mean, but you haven't been able to keep him healthy long enough to really be able to benefit off of that first round selection. And then, Carl Granderson is somebody that's developing. Tono Passanio's contract is up. Like there's so many different places that they can go when it comes to edge rusher. But I do think that going to the draft and finding a guy that is a speedy edge rusher that also has some of the other qualities that you like is important. And Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech is that guy. 6'5", 275 pounds. shows you multiple moves in the pass rushing game, knows how to string them all together, is somebody that can, get that swim move and then make that inside swim move to get after the quarterback, is somebody that can also push an offensive lineman into your lap, is great in the run game as well. I like Tyree Wilson a lot. So if the Saints were to end up with a top 10, top 15 selection, and they can't get one of the quarterbacks that's worth drafting in that range, I think edge makes perfect sense. And Tyree Wilson could be one of those guys. Some folks think of him, and there's another name that we'll talk about a little bit later, as potential like top 10 players in the NFL. But because of the position rankings and the way that like offensive tackle and quarterback is going to kind of infest the top 10, it's going to push some of those other names down. The other more likely scenario is that instead of getting the 8th overall selection or a top 10 selection from the Arizona Cardinals, is that you end up getting their second round selection. They picked around 38 here. So not far behind the New Orleans Saints, actually 1 or 2 picks behind or around in that area, right? We'll have to see how the season actually ends up. But Andre Carter II, who I mentioned earlier, the Army edge rusher, was the pick at 38, 6'7", 260 pounds for the Arizona Cardinals. This could be an option. I was talking about edge rushers earlier, but I think too much of a project here. And I think you've tried this already. You tried it with Marcus Davenport. You tried it with Peyton Turner. Let's be honest, it didn't work out. You need a player that is a little bit more polished. It's why I like a guy like Tyree Wilson, but Tyree Wilson's going to be off the board early. So what holds me up about a guy like Andre Carter, and this is all going to sound familiar, y'all. This is all going to sound familiar. Needs to develop a second move. Needs to add more strength. You can see where he doesn't have all the strength that he needs. Rushes mostly out of a 2-point stance, plays more of the outside linebacker type of pass rusher role than the hand in the dirt pass rusher role. These are all things that you've heard before. Too much of a project for me. I'll pass on this and find out maybe where, we'll see if he maybe beefs up his draft stock over the offseason or something like that. And maybe that ends up making a big difference in changing things if we start to see him, develop throughout his draft process. But as of right now, I'm pushing the pause button there, and I'm going with guys that are a little bit more proven. And you're going to be able to find some of those guys that are a little bit more proven with more than just the Arizona Cardinals picks. You can find them with Los Angeles Chargers picks, and you can potentially even find them with the Denver Broncos picks. That's where we're going to next. What could those picks look like in return for a Sean Payton trade? We're going to break all that down as we continue on to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints. Today's episode brought to you by PrizePicks, our awesome partners over at PrizePicks, who make daily fantasy the way that it absolutely should be. There's absolutely no question about it. I loves me some PrizePicks. It's super simple. You go to the website. You can do it at PrizePicks.com or on the PrizePicks app. You can pick 2 to 5 players. Simply just choose whether or not they're coming in at more or less than their PrizePicks projections. You get those right, and you're going up to 10 times your entry. It's that simple. It's you versus the house. Your knowledge of your favorite players, favorite game, favorite sport, favorite teams, matchups, everything. Like that. I mean, it's whether it's the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, the MLB, whatever it is that you're looking at, they'll have you all taken care of over at PrizePicks today. And you can get a 100% instant deposit match if you're a first-time user by simply using the promo code Locked On. You put that in over at PrizePicks.com or with the PrizePicks app, and you can get that 100% instant deposit match of up to $100. So you put $100 down, they'll match $100. You put $50 down, they'll match $50. You know how numbers work. Go and check it out today. PrizePicks.com or the PrizePicks app. Promo code Locked On. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Saints with a final look at some Peyton picks, right? That's what we're going to call them from now on. Some potential Peyton picks. So what are the other ones to consider? Well, we've discussed the Los Angeles Rams all season. We'll see where that goes. I mean, that's a team that looks like it could still be a playoff team. But there's another team out there that, has been sort of connected and will be looking for a head coach. The Indianapolis Colts are there. They don't have a first round pick, though. The Denver Broncos are the other ones. So we're going to take a look at the Denver Broncos. We're going to take a look at the Los Angeles Chargers, who have right now later first-round picks, therefore more realistic first-round picks that you get up out of them when it comes to trading Sean Payton. So we'll start off with the Los Angeles Chargers here. We'll see. I mean, if they make the playoffs, it seems weird that they would move on from Brandon Staley, but hey, we've seen stuff like that before. The selection that they made at 16th overall in this particular draft, again, that'll continue to move, but 16th overall in this particular mock, was that they took Georgia offensive tackle Broderick Jones. And Broderick Jones, again, also a very good talent, one of the top 3 probably offensive tackles in this class outside of the kid from Northwestern, and then, of course, Paris Johnson from Ohio State. Again, I don't see the Saints going that route. So my pick, if the Saints were able to get that 16th overall selection, would be one of those top edge rushers like we had talked about, which would be like a Tyree Wilson if he's still available on the board. I think he's going to go pretty early, though. Or Florida State edge rusher Jordan Verse. Now, Jordan Verse blew up the entire ACC, the entire college football realm when he transferred from Albany to Florida State, and then all of a sudden had this like incredible, season with them. Great pass rusher, super athletic guy. I think that he's one of those players that's going to move up a lot, kind of like I can't remember his name, Jermaine Johnson from Florida State last year. The way that he kind of like climbed the charts. I was so close saying Jermaine Jackson when I said that. But the way that he kind of climbed the charts with his Senior Bowl performance and then his draft, his combine stuff, his offseason stuff, all of that, like he just kind of climbed and climbed and climbed and climbed. He could be one of those guys as well. So definitely somebody to watch out for. Some folks already think of him as a top 10 player. But what if the Saints decided to zig while others are zagging, right? Like they already have the other second round pick. They would have their own second round pick plus this first round pick. Could they potentially move up for a quarterback or something like that? Sure. But you'd also stand pat in the second round and potentially land an Anthony Richardson, a Will Levis, a Hendon Hooker, another guy that I'll discuss here in a moment. So what if they surprised a little bit and went wide receiver? Ooh, a luxury pick in the first round for a team that might only finish with 4 wins. I love it. I really love it. And the thing that I really like about it is that like the guy that was available in this range, and part of the reason why it pushed me this way was USC wide receiver Jordan Addison, formerly of the Pittsburgh Panthers. The kid's a remarkable athlete. Fantastic hands, a classic X receiver. And so because you don't necessarily know right now what the future is with Michael Thomas, which we'll discuss in tomorrow's episode a little more as well, our second episode tomorrow, you could potentially look to continue to reinvest in wide receiver here. I mean, you don't know if Jarvis Landry's coming back next season. You don't know what's going to happen with Michael Thomas. You've got Chris Olave, you've got Rashid Shaheed, but it would be nice in addition to those 2 speed guys, and you've got other guys like Marquez Callaway, Traquan Smith. We'll have to see what the future of those guys actually is. But when you have those speedy guys, the next thing that you're looking for is a guy that is just a world beater, like a guy that is a face catcher, can go up there, make the 50-50 plays, make the big physical plays, all that. Jordan Addison is that guy. So I would love to see the New Orleans Saints find a way, if they end up messing around and getting a first round selection, then also mess around and land a guy like Jordan Addison. That might be the place that I go, depending upon what I hold on to when it comes to that second round pick and everything. And look, Jordan Addison, 6 foot, 170 something pounds. He's got to get bigger. He's got to beef up all of that other stuff, but he's got the frame to get it done. He's not a Michael Thomas in terms of being a 6'3" guy, but he plays well above that height, well above that weight. He plays much bigger than he is. And I think that would be a nice thing to add. And, you think about his speed, you think about Chris Olave's speed, you think about Rashid Shaheed's speed, you think about the intelligence of all of those players, and you think about pairing that up with Hendon Hooker and giving them some of that receiver option game plan, then all of a sudden it makes a little bit more sense too. So I really like it. I really like that. But I wouldn't be mad at a guy like Jared Verse either. I'd be nuts if I complained about that. Pick 48 overall was the second round pick that the Los Angeles Chargers had. They went with defensive lineman Dervin Dexter. I'm cool. I liked Cameron Ward here, the quarterback out of Washington State. Again, I like these guys that have the big arm and that are comfortable in the pocket. Maybe he's a little bit less comfortable in the pocket than Hendon Hooker, but you just want to kind of help develop him to get him there. But can, scramble and be an X factor, extend plays with their legs. Zach Hicks, who's one of the co-hosts over at Locked On Colts, Benjamin Solak, who used to be with us over at Locked On NFL Draft, now over at The Ringer, writing about things like how we have to redefine the way that we look at high floor quarterbacks, because we tend to call pocket passers high floor guys, which means you're going to get like a certain level of expected production out of them and you're okay with that certain level of expected production. But then we talk about these mobile quarterbacks as high ceiling guys with a low floor, like they're bang or bust or whatever, when really, like in this day and age of the NFL, the mobile guys kind of have the higher floor now because they can create the production for you one way or another. If they can't create the production for you through the air because the options are taken away or because the pass rush is bearing down, they have a higher floor in those circumstances than the pocket passer does, because they can escape, they can get outside, they can, play a little bit of schoolyard ball like a Patrick Mahomes, or they can run and pick up the additional yardage like a Jalen Hurts. This is where the NFL is moving those are now the high floor guys. And I love that conversation. Super big shout out to Zach Hicks as well as Benjamin Solak. Please go find those articles. I'll try to find them and put them in the descriptions on YouTube and audio side as well. Great articles around all that. All right, to wrap us up, Denver Broncos, no second round pick, but they've got they have a first round pick from the San Francisco 49ers. 24th overall is where it was projected during this mock draft. They went with edge rusher Nolan Smith out of Georgia. I like that pick. I don't mind that pick at all. He's another one that's like an athletic guy. I really think that that's where the Saints should head at edge rusher, is start looking for, even though the frames might be a little bit smaller, you could still beef these guys up a little bit, but you're looking at taking advantage of the speed rush prototype as opposed to the pushing back, the power prototype. But another player that I really liked in this range at the end of the first round was safety Antonio Johnson from Texas A&M. The guy's a playmaker. He's a big time hitter. He's good in run support. He's a good, he's got good ball skills. The guy can do just about all of it. And I think safety is a position that you look at for next season, because you already know that, look, Tyrann Mathieu didn't have the stellar playmaker season that you expected him to have. Neither did Marcus May. Marcus May's potentially got, some series of potential suspensions coming up in 2023 with the legal troubles that he's navigated over the course of this season. You get a guy like Antonio Johnson at least just waiting in the wings, then you're in a good place there. There's another safety out of, I think it's Brandon Smith, if I remember correctly, the guy out of Notre Dame, who's also a great option there as well. The other thing you could do at the bottom of the first round with a pick like this in the mid to late 20s is grab a Hendon Hooker or an Anthony Richardson or a Will Levis or, whatever quarterback you really like to get the 5th-year option on them. So that's another option in terms of what you can do at the end of the first round if the Denver Broncos, for instance, were a trade partner. I don't know if I would do that with that Los Angeles Chargers pick in the middle of the first round, but at the end of the first round, I could definitely see that happen. Or trade back to the last pick or one of the final picks in the later 30s, 29, 30, 31, somewhere around there. Remember, there's not going to be a 32nd pick in this year's draft because the Dolphins messed up with the tampering. All right, coming up in tomorrow's episode, it's Wednesday. We're going to take our Film Watch Wednesday, turn it into a preview, right? We're going to take a look at some of the stuff that worked for the New Orleans Saints down the stretch against the Atlanta Falcons. That was with Jameis Winston at quarterback. What can you translate to Andy Dalton, as well as what some of the things to look at in the Tampa Bay game that went wrong on the defensive side and how to get those things fixed going up against Desmond Ridder and the Atlanta Falcons. So we're going to break that down. And then Wednesday afternoon is also I think I'm going to roll with, I got to put the poll out. We'll find out what we call it. But the second episode will be more of our kind of like war room, what if type performance Wednesday of answering the biggest questions. So we'll get to what happens with Michael Thomas going into the offseason, what happens with Marcus Davenport going into the offseason, and any more of your biggest questions. Make sure you send them my way as well. All right, y'all, I appreciate you as always making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day for your second listen. Go and check out Locked On Sports today so you know everything going on around the world of sports, available in the Odyssey app, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. As always, I appreciate you so much for making the show a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation, I'll holla at you.